I want you to understand that when we talk about Christian cursing, who's the one who does the cursing? You know, write that down. Who does the cursing? Christian curses. Who does the cursing? It is Christians. Where do they curse at? Often Christians don't realize that the arena they curse other Christians in the most is the arena of the church itself. See, the church ought to be a place where we get encouraged, we get edified, we get lifted up, we get built up, man. We get fed the word. We come in to offer God our highest praise. We fellowship with other believers. It's not a place for us to stab people in the back and to talk about other Christians and do it in the name of God. However, the church is often the arena where Christians are cursed the most. And you say, well, why would a Christian curse? Well, let me tell you why. Because there's an absence of love. Wherever there is an absence of love, wherever there is the absence of somebody walking in the power of love, there is a potential for great evil to exist. Because when you curse somebody, there is always an absence of love. It is often rooted in self-love, self-will, self-rule, and self-importance. We often don't realize that cursing others is not a way for us to feel better about ourselves. It's not a way for us to belittle others and elevate our own lives. Cursing someone is an absence of love, and there is a potential for great evil to exist wherever there is an absence of love in somebody's life. It is an opportunity for us to give place to the enemy. And Ephesians chapter 4, verse 27 tells us, give no place, give no space, give no vacancy to the enemy. In other words, put a no vacancy sign up in your heart and let the devil know every room in my life, every room in my heart is full of God, and I have no room for hate. I have no room for cursing. I have no room for anything that is not of God, because the Lord fills every space in my life. See, a Christian curse, you're going to need to write this down, is truly a heartfelt invoking. It is a heartfelt invoking, or simply put, an angry calling down of evil by one Christian upon another Christian. Can I say it again? It is a heartfelt invoking. Heartfelt. Usually when a Christian curses another Christian, it's not something that just comes flippantly off the top of their head. It is something that is heartfelt. It is invoking, it's an angry calling down of evil by one Christian upon another. When you curse somebody, you damn them. You denounce them. You slander, you afflict, you wound, or you trouble another with your words. Your words are important. Your words are powerful. Your words have the power of life and death. You can heal or you can kill by the words that come out of your mouth. Somebody's going to get it, or I'm going to talk all day until you do. Because one thing that we've got to grab a hold on, if we're truly claiming to be spiritually mature, and if we truly believe we're growing in Christ, if you really are, you've got to understand that one visible, tangible sign of your spiritual growth is that you learn to control the tongue inside your mouth. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, Jesus is speaking. This is his first message. In the middle of his first message here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, he makes a declaration. He is making every effort to raise the standard, to call us as his children, to call us as his people to even a higher standard of living. The Old Testament brought us one standard. But as I've told you before, every true prophet raises the standard. Every false prophet will lower the standard. Jesus, being a true prophet and following that precedent, was raising the standard in his first message and declaring basically what he was coming to do. As he began his ministry, as he released his first message in Matthew chapter 5, he's given all kinds of different things in these 2 chapters of stuff that we as Christians ought to be having in our lives. And here in Matthew chapter 5, he declares, "You have heard that it was said by them of old time." In other words, he's saying, in the Old Testament, this is what you have heard. This is what you have read. "Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment." He's saying this doesn't come as a surprise to you. This isn't something that's foreign to you. This is something that you're fully aware of. Not just your generation, but every previous generation has come into contact with the commandments, and you are in full understanding that if you kill somebody, it is wrong, and you are in danger of judgment. A lot of times we're very good at wanting people to receive some form of consequence for doing something like murdering or killing somebody on the earth, while we get away with doing things and we justify our own wrong. And Jesus said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the standard. I'm going to tell you something different. I'm going to cause your flesh to burn a little bit by what I say. Because I'm not just going to repeat the same old stuff. I'm not just going to tell you what you've heard. But now I want you to know that because I've come, that I'm requiring more of you than any generation previous. I really believe we're living in a generation where God is requiring more of us. We may be failing God, but He's still requiring more of us than He has any generation in the history of mankind. So in verse 22, he goes on to say, but, everybody shout, but. How many know when you read but, hear but, you know something's coming? And here Jesus said, but I say to you, that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause. Now that without a cause is a big thing. We come back to that one. But who is ever angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. In other words, you know what? You can't just call somebody a name. You can't just say whatever you want to about somebody and not be held accountable. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Your words can change your destiny. Your words can change your eternal living place. Do you understand the words that come out of your mouth and how you treat other people are really a reflection of how much of God is living inside of you? That Raka spirit that is alive in the church. Jesus was warning Christians here in Matthew 5 concerning their judgmental, critical, destructive, negative, evil words. He was letting us know, guys, that it is murder by word of mouth. You don't just murder somebody physically. You can murder somebody emotionally by the words that you speak to them in their lives. It is murder by mouth. It is verbal cannibalism. It is witchcraft that is expressed in your speech, and it is cursing another believer, and those things are wrong in the eyes of God. Your anger, your bitter name calling, your cursing of others has the same effect as physical murder. Anger violates God's command to love. Anger is a dangerous emotion that will lead to violence, emotional hurt, mental stress, and ultimately spiritual damage. Proverbs 25, verse 18 says, false words or lies are as harmful as hitting a man with an axe, or wounding him with a sword, or shooting him with a sharp arrow. Words can be weapons. Anybody writing this down, or you acting like you don't hear me? Words are weapons. And the Bible said that our weapons are not carnal. They're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Our weapons, our words can be weapons. They can be weapons that are constructive and build, or they can be weapons that are destructive and tear down. Oftentimes, the reason why we feel the need to say things about people that we sometimes shouldn't say is often because we don't deal with offense that is in our heart. We get offended, we get ticked off, we get mad. And the way we deal with things is we deal with it in the natural realm by attacking somebody else. When we don't like what they say, when we don't like what they do, when they go against something we feel they ought to be doing, we have a tendency to not be able to keep our mouth shut, and we run them for somebody's personal destruction. We get offended. We get mad. There's 3 main reasons. Write this down why people get offended. 3 main reasons Christians get offended. The number 1 reason they get offended is because they don't get enough support from people. Listen to me when I tell you this, because when you don't get support from people, you better learn how to handle it. When you don't get the support, the pat on the back, the praise, maybe even the love that you think you ought to be getting. You need to protect your heart from allowing offense to come in when you don't get the support from others that you think you ought to be getting. Some people might say, well, you know what, I went to that church, but no one shook my hand, no one hugged my neck, no one even talked to me. And because we don't feel support from the people, we get offended and we don't want to go back. Let me tell you something, I understand that. I think when people come in the church, we ought to be the first ones to shake their hands, welcome them, greet them, let them know we're thankful that you have come to church and you are welcome to be here. We're not acting like, you know what, you ought to be blessed to be in our presence. We ought to be acting like, you know what, we're blessed to be in their presence. Maybe if we had more of an attitude, a reaching out attitude, or a loving attitude, maybe more people, would want to go, not just to this church, but a lot of churches, that they felt the love and receptivity that God tells us to provide to them. It's going to be a tougher message than what I thought. You don't get support from people. Well, let's look at somebody in the Bible who didn't get support. David was one who didn't get support. David, man after God's own heart, but he had more issues than we could keep track of. David's out there tending to the sheep, doing what he needs to do, but he didn't get support from people. Jesse was his father, Eliab was his brother, Saul was his king, Goliath was his enemy, Micah was his wife. None of them supported him. Can you imagine not getting support from just one of those? Here, David didn't get support from any of those. The potential for David to be offended because those over him did not support him was great. But David made a choice that he wasn't going to allow those over him to affect his destiny. And David reminded the king, David said, I want you to know, I know I'm nothing. I know I ain't much. I know I'm young. I know I got issues. I know there's probably people more qualified, more able, more ready to fight, but ain't nobody stepping up, but I am. And I want you to know when a lion came and a bear came to get those sheep, I fought them and I broke their neck. I took their lives to protect the sheep. And if I can take care of the lion and the bear, now I'm ready for the Goliath. And if nobody wants to step up and fight, then I'll do my part. I'll die for the cause if so be, but I will not tolerate this enemy standing up against my God. And so we get offended when we don't get enough support from people. Another reason people get offended is when we don't get enough attention from leadership. Well, let's just go ahead and turn over to Matthew. Verse 46, Matthew chapter 12. Let's wreck your world today. While he yet talked to people, behold, his mother and his brothers stood without, desiring to speak with him. But he answered and said unto him that told him that, who is my mother and who are my brethren? Boy, wait till you get home. Somebody going to have some corner time. Somebody going to get their cell phone taken away this afternoon. And he stretched forth his hands toward his disciples and said, Behold my mother and my brethren. Jesus' mom and brother demanded a meeting with Jesus while he was teaching. And he told them he was teaching and that his mother and his brothers were those who heard and obeyed his words. I'm going to tell you something. You know what? It's like I tell my kids. My children do not need me to be their friend as much as they need me to be their father. And it's the same thing with church people. You need a pastor more than you need a friend. It really don't work out with pastor being too close to some people because they can't handle it if the pastor don't act like they want him to act whenever they want him to act like it. Because we forget the pastor's a man too, and his wife is real, and his wife goes through some stuff too. So when they find out the pastor ain't perfect, wow, all hell breaks loose. Well, let me just tell you something. I ain't perfect. I ain't perfect. I'm imperfect. I got a lot of flaws. Maybe not a lot, but I got some. I do have some. Really, I do. I don't know if I have a whole lot, honestly. I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I got more than I'm willing to admit, but I'm not going to do it here. But can we quit getting offended at everything leadership does? We are so negative and complain, why did he make this decision? Why did he make that decision? What's he doing there? What's he doing here? What about this? What about that? Well, maybe if he had a little bit of support, maybe he could do a lot more with that support than he could with your critical spirit. Go ahead, you can clap. And then the third reason we get offended is because we don't get enough blessing from God. John chapter 11, we could read it, but, it's about Lazarus' sisters and how they got mad at Jesus because he didn't come when they asked. My brother's about to die. You're friends with him. You hung out with him. You went on a cruise with him, He's come over your house. You've gone over his. My brother's dying. And, we just know if you go visit him that he wouldn't die. And Jesus didn't go. And he died. And they got mad. You ever get mad that Jesus didn't act the way you thought he should act? Come on, somebody just look at me. Did you ever have it all planned out? This is what Pastor Bill said. This is what the TBN preacher said. This is the way they ought to be doing it. And then when Jesus doesn't do exactly what you say he's going to do, then you get mad that he didn't do what you wanted him to do when you want him to do it. Mary and Martha said, listen, you know what? We've been doing a lot. You know how much we do. Don't forget, one of us washed your feet. Another one of us made you some meals. Remember us? Quesadilla Wednesday. Wow, how many people think that somebody owes them something? When you do something for somebody, don't do it so you can have don't do it so you can have a card in the hat and pull it out when you want to. Well, hey, I paid my tithes. Let me pull that card out, and now you're going to do it. No. We've got people trying to manipulate leadership, manipulate God because of what they've done. If you can't do it in an honest, pure way without looking for something in return, then don't do it at all. Nobody owes you. You're not entitled to nothing. But yet we do things because we want to kiss up, we want to suck up, we want to get somebody to, have them when we want them. That's not why you do anything nice for anybody. And there's a bunch of Christian cannibals, a bunch of Christian cursing going on in the church because we are not getting the support from people, the attention from leadership, or the blessing from God that we think we deserve.